Well, hey everyone, welcome to another exciting conversation. And today, as the title for the post today was 144 hours without food or water, my 6-day dry fast experience. So you might have seen the recent few posts I've done about sort of taking a break from being online in the space and really stepping into this time of year, which is all about recalibrating, letting go of the old and stepping into new life. That's what the spring is here for. The winter is there to remind us of what no longer serves us, and then we jump into spring. So, as I often like to do, I took advantage of that opportunity to do some inner cleansing, both spiritually and emotionally and physically. But today we're mostly going to be talking about the physical aspect of that, and I chose to do a dry fast this time. So if that's the first time that you're hearing about a dry fast and no food or water, it might sound quite crazy, might sound insane to embark on something seemingly so risky and counterintuitive, right? We're always told hydration is so important, and I'm not negating that. I don't want to take anything away from the importance of hydration on a regular basis. However, there is something magical about dry fasting. There's something quite profound about what it does to the body and how we can tap into this tool if we use it responsibly, and to really unlock some areas within ourselves and get into deeper levels of healing. Now, I want to just go ahead and say a disclaimer that I'm not suggesting that anybody go out and try this. I'm just sharing my experience. This is something that I found, and through various forms of fasting and various forms of health avenues, I find it to be a very beneficial and helpful thing for me. But it does come with quite a lot of risk. So, as with anything that's ever shared on this channel, you have to proceed with your own body in the ways that you find fit. We all should take risk, and I shouldn't even really have to say that. But I don't want anybody taking what I say idly or carelessly and going out and trying this without great care, without great research and experience. Because this hasn't been something that's overnight that I've gotten to this point. I didn't just wake up and say, "Oh, I've never fasted before. I'm going to jump into a 6-day dry fast." So, did want to make that clear, and it is something that there's a lot of energy this weekend, especially with the new moon and the eclipse, and lots of shifts and lots of different spaces as we come into Aries in this new season. So there's a ton. I'm feeling a ton of it, and feeling inspired to do lots more. Feeling somewhat of the discombobulation of the Mercury retrograde, but it's I enjoy those challenges at times too. But yeah, last night I woke up at like 3 a.m. and could not fall back to sleep. So I got up and I meditated for almost an hour and still couldn't go to sleep. So it just kept coming to me, this show, and preparing for it. And I don't normally do a whole lot of preparation for shows. I'm one who often prefers just to be off the cuff and sharing what I know and speaking from the heart. However, this one felt a little different, and I felt inspired to actually write a little outline. And then that outline grew and turned into something more. So it's not quite finished yet, but I am going to walk through that document that I've been putting together as we go through this conversation. And then I'm hoping to have that finished by the time I get this up on my website, whenever that is, so that, it's all together. So if you're listening to the recording later on, hopefully the document is there. If it's not quite there, it's coming. So yeah, I think that's just the easiest way to go through it, just to have a sort of because I was thinking of like, what do I share? Or how do I start? And what can I start with? And I think just breaking down the experience, giving my overview of what I've learned around dry fasting and in my experience with it this time and other times, to sort of paint a complete picture and give people an idea if you're curious about what that process has been like. So with that said, I'm just going to go ahead and share this document, and we'll just go through it, and I'll have a bunch to discuss as we go through it. And if at any point you have questions or want to jump in, just raise your hand. And when I get to a stopping point, I'll make sure to call on you. And especially towards the end, we'll have lots of time to discuss and to share our experiences or our questions or anything we have on our mind. So without further ado, let's just go straight to the document here. All right, so let me zoom in so y'all can actually see this. There, I think that should be pretty good. About as good as it's going to get. So yeah, I wrote the disclaimer in here as well. This isn't intended to be medical advice. This is merely an overview of what I've gathered based on what I've learned in my direct experience. So I first wanted to start with just some acknowledgement and gratitude, because I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have this information or this knowledge without two people in particular. First, I'll mention, because he kind of led me to this space, is my dear friend Casey, who you guys might know from the channel Vegetable Police. And I love Casey. I love him so much. If I had to pick one YouTube channel, I think it'd be his. If I could only watch one, it'd be his, because it's always funny. It's always informative. I don't always agree 100% with everything that he says, but the way that he goes about it is just very authentic and kind and funny. And yeah, so wonderful man. And he was the one who led me to Trevor with the channel Fasting with Trevor, because Casey, if you do follow his channel, you're probably aware that he tries out a whole bunch of different ways of eating and fasting styles and various things to bring him towards a better state of health. And then he shares his journey along the way. And you might remember, if you've been following long enough, him and I used to do a show series together, Mankind's Quest for True Health, which was awesome, where we interviewed various people that we looked up to in the health space, and talked about how they got there and what they uncovered and various practices and pros and cons of each way. So it was a really great series, and maybe we'll bring it back someday. That would be pretty cool. But yeah, so that's how I found that. That's who I was following initially. And Casey decided to do a dry fast and was sharing just how amazed he was at Trevor, this guy that he found on YouTube, who was sharing his experiences of going on 15 to 20 plus days of dry fasting. So 20 days of not a drop of water or a crumb of food entering the mouth, and living, and also reporting back amazing testimonials, amazing results from doing something like this. So of course I was intrigued, and I started diving through Trevor's channel and quickly just loved his way of presenting things. And I loved how he took the approach of, his journey brought him there to, in the beginnings, with the physical needs. He had a lot of ailments that he could not address in any other way and he has a wide array of experience in various modalities of healing, but he couldn't find relief through these alternative means. The only thing that truly got him there was going really deep into dry fasting. And he said that the deepest illnesses he got were not healed until he went over 12 days. So that's pretty intense, you know, and you can find a fair bit of information about dry fasting, especially in Russian literature. It's bigger in Russia. There's a lot of clinics there that actually do guide people through dry fast, and they help them through the process. And they'll do upwards of 12 days as well, but they don't usually go past that point, you know, because of course every day that you do that, it gets riskier. But his faith and dedication, and he is a very spiritually oriented man, led him to continue to pushing onward and trusting his body. And that's really what fasting comes down to. It's like we trust our God-given body to give us exactly what we need, to take care of us and to address the things that it has to. We just have to get out of its way. So yeah, I've been following Trevor's channel for a while, and I've loved just about everything that I've listened and heard from him. And I am excited to announce that he just recently did another long dry fast in March as well. He likes to do a yearly one around this time. He said he had to cut it off at 18 days. You know, he's not one to mess with. He knows the signs very well of when it's time to stop, and it's good not to push past those points. So he stopped at 18 days this time, which, you know, it's like 3 times as long as I did is so hard to imagine, because when I got to day 6, it was extremely challenging. And I can only imagine thinking, oh, wow, okay, I've gotten 3 times as long, because I remember getting to day 3 and thinking, man, how am I gonna push through? How am I gonna double this? I'm only halfway there for as far as I want to go. So he's pretty incredible, and obviously has a lot of willpower to do such a thing. And it's very encouraging to hear his dedication to wanting to share this message, to helping people to find healing. And he does work pretty tirelessly helping people. So I left a link to his link tree, because it includes his YouTube channel, but also includes the Telegram group and ways you can contact him directly. So, you know, he helps people in the Telegram group for free consistently. And then if you want some extra help and you want to go deeper into a fast, you want help as you're in a fast, then you can, you can pay for a consultation with him, which, you know, I think is very fair given his knowledge and expertise. So yeah, but he's said many times he's not really doing it for the money, and he fortunately doesn't really need it. He's really there to help. He's found this healing through that space, and he wants to help. So thank you, Trevor, for that. And I don't know if I said, but I did contact him and wished him well after the long fast, and he got back to me and he agreed. He said he'd love to come on and do an interview sometime. So look forward to that. We'll have Trevor on sometime, and we'll get to actually speak with him and talk more about that. And I'm really curious to hear he says he's going to release his new video out pretty soon, to share some revelations that he's had during this experience, and just hear the sort of spiritual awakenings that he continues to have. So it's cool to hear. So anyway, that's what I wanted to start with, was just a huge thank you to both of them. But especially Fasting with Trevor, because the information that I've sort of synthesized and distilled in this document is like, you know, it's 90% coming from Trevor in some way or another. I changed a few things just based on my preferences and how I like to operate. But for the most part, it's his, this is his experience coming through. And I just wanted to make it a little bit easier for myself to reference. But then, like I said, I'm going to finish this document and share it for others to use as well. Well, again, use at your own risk. And I'm not suggesting that you do, but this is just information. It's for entertainment purposes only, right? because yeah, so let's just get into it, and we can talk about the risks involved with it as well. So what is fasting? So fasting is essentially, it means the word comes from the root to hold strong, to hold steady. It's an old and somewhere along the way it kind of shifted into this like meaning quick or speedy, but that was the initial root of the word, was to hold strong, to hold steady. So when we fast, we're holding strong against parasites, cravings, the ego, the ways that, you know, we're sort of conditioned, or any of these things, so that we can reclaim our health and reclaim our body. So yeah, that's kind of the general sense of fasting. And I want to go over, you know, the various forms of fasting that people often refer to. So I'll start with fruit fasting, and I put this one in quotes because some people don't consider this fasting. I tend to not consider this one fasting. This is more of like a cleanse. Some people will say fruit feasting. Some people will do this with juices, but it's essentially you're abstaining from anything else except for fruit. You know, you're eating, 100% fruit, and uh, that has a wonderful way of hydrating the body and cleansing and clearing many things. And for a beginner, this is the best place to start. I at least in my experience, this is what I'm happy that I've started with. Actually, I did start with water fasting prior to doing fruit cleanse, but I do feel like a fruit cleanse is a better place to start because you don't really have to interrupt your whole life to do it. You know, if you're eating fruit consistently, you're hydrating, you've got your calorie, you can meet your caloric needs, you've got your energy levels. Um, so you can pretty much go about your daily life. Now, the first time that you go on a fruit cleanse, or the first few times, or depending on how much you swing back into processed foods and things of that nature, the more challenging even a fruit fast can be, the more challenging any type of fast can be. So it's important to view all of this material from a completely relative point of view based on your health and your body. Please don't compare yourself to me or what I've done and try and skip steps or do anything too rashly or quickly, and we're all kind of made a little differently too. Some people find certain tools and things helpful, and others don't. So I'm just sharing what I've learned and what I've found helpful. But a fruit cleanse is quite helpful. And some of the things that you might encounter that can make it difficult not to necessarily go through your daily life is when we are exclusively eating only fruit or only juices. This food is typically so quick to digest and move through us that a lot of the parasites within us don't have time to latch onto it. They're drawn towards the processed foods, the denser things, the even animal products. In a lot of ways, they're drawn to those because they can use those for longer periods of time. So when we remove those and we stick with just fruit, we're cutting off the food supply for quite a number of parasites within our body. And when this happens, they don't go quietly into the night. They they throw a fit, because it's life or death essentially. And the way that parasites can be so troublesome within us, parasites and fungus, I'm kind of using that parasite term uh, similarly, even though they're a little different, but they have the same sort of parasitic effect on us. When we cut off their supply, they're tapped into our nervous system a lot of times. That's how they signal to us to have cravings for various things and to eat things that we know aren't bringing us health or longevity. But for some reason, we're drawn to them even more sometimes, even more so than just the taste. The explosive flavors are certainly layers to that, but there's a deeper level of this parasitic hunger that can be, that they use to steer us. And so when we go on a fruit cleanse, we're denying that hunger. We're denying that layer of us, and we're only feeding what our body's really craving at its core, which in the simplest form, our body just wants the the simple sugars, the fructose. Fructose is the best form. Glucose is another form. Sucrose is another form. The the simple sugars are what it's craving for fuel, and then it's looking for minerals. And fruit can provide all of that. So when we do a fruit cleanse, that can be a helpful way to sort of step into that and give it an opportunity to sort of reevaluate what is our relationship with hunger. You know, if we have access to um, enough food to sustain ourselves and again meet our energetic needs from eating something like that, yet we still feel this hunger and this craving. Well, it's like, where is this coming from if my body's not really designed for that? So that starts the process of seeing these little bugs that exist within us. So yeah, that's sort of a fruit cleanse overview. And then water fasting is taking it to another level where you're abstaining from any solid food or any food whatsoever. So anything that has calories to it, anything that has sugar to it, you're simply on pure water 100%. And that takes it to another deeper level. You know, you're again cutting off the source of these parasites for what they want to use. And so they're going to revolt. And when I mention that, what they might do if you haven't experienced something like this, some people call it the Herxheimer reactions. Some people call it candida die-off. Some people, it doesn't really matter. When you experience that kind of stuff, the reactions within our body range pretty significantly. It's not like, oh, this is the only thing that happens when I feel this way or when I abstain from that. But it can be a wide variety of symptoms. You know, my symptoms when I shift from eating, especially when I first started cleansing, away from processed foods and animal products and all of that, was mouth ulcers. Really, really bad mouth ulcers. Really painful. It would last for a few days, and so that was one symptom. Intense nausea can be another one. Headaches can be another one. But really, you name a symptom, and that can be one. So it's just something to be aware of as we go deeper into levels of fasting, is these little guys aren't going to want to go quietly. So again, water fasting is another level. And that, if you're unaware, is simply, just drinking water, you know. And if you do water fast, I suggest copious amounts of water, but not all at once. You know, don't guzzle it. Don't drink it down quickly. We can't process, our kidneys can't process that much water all at once. And so when we do drink too much water too quickly, or too much fluid of really anything, but especially water, it's going to flush a lot of electrolytes and minerals out of our body. So if you do a water fast, it's good to drink a lot of water, you know, at least a gallon a day, but usually more, but do it slowly over time, you know, sipping it. So that's sort of that one. And then the next one that I threw up there, because this was sort of the next one that I started practicing, is Oran fasting. And for those of you who are new to that concept of Shivambu or Oran therapy, urine therapy is as some call it, though I prefer those terms because it takes away from the disgust factor. But the disgust factor is simply a programmed lie pushed into us that this substance that comes out of us is waste and we should just throw it away, and that's that. I've practiced extensively using it in a wide variety of means, and everything that I use it for tends to have positive results or neutral, you know, but I've never had negative results from using Oran topically internally. And so Oran fasting is simply you're looping, you're drinking everything that's coming out and creating that feedback loop. And I found this to be, in my experience, more powerful healing wise than water fasting, but less challenging. So it's like to a point, I'll say it's less challenging because there is like some real nourishment and energy that you can get from the orange, but orange is naturally antiparasitic. It's naturally antifungal. So this isn't something that these things can really feed off of that well. So you're not going through as much of a withdrawal from nourishment as water fasting, but you're still getting the same, if not better, of a punch to address that and hold fast to get away from these little bugs. But I say to a point that it's easier because in my experience, at least, when I fast long enough, when my body goes into ketosis, which I'll talk about a bit more when we get into it. But essentially, ketosis is when your body switches to fat burning. And once my body's been in ketosis for long enough, then the ketones do get excreted in the urine, and that can be quite acidic. I've heard people fasting enough to where this doesn't happen any longer, but I haven't gotten to that point. So me, usually after a few days, my orin is far too acidic to be palatable even. It's so when that happens, when I'm doing an orin fast, I switch to water if I'm going that route. So just something to note in that. So yeah, that's the other three. And then today's topic is going to be centered around dry fasting. So this is a whole nother level where you're abstaining completely from food or water. Nothing goes in your mouth. And some people, and I've done this before, will mouth tape the entire time, like literally they sell specific mouth tape that you can use while you're sleeping, or you can just buy, medical grade tape and put a little strip on your lips to keep your lips closed, obviously not not to a scary degree, but just to hold them closed, especially while you're sleeping. That can be helpful if you're prone to mouth breathing. And that helps avoid temptations of putting in anything into your mouth and speaking, because we'll talk about that too. So yeah, this is a whole nother level of depth to it. And so we'll just I wrote here, so when I felt ready for each. So it was quite incremental. I wanted to get very comfortable with going on fruit cleanses. I used to do more juice cleanses, and I still think juice cleanses are a very powerful tool. However, I've kind of shifted my perspective around juice cleanses in that I feel like they add a lot of challenges after about a month or two. So if you're going to go on a juice cleanse, it's a great tool to use for a few weeks, for a month. Dr. Morse will suggest, no more than 60 days, probably for similar reasons. And then there are those out there that will do much longer, going on like 100+ days. And what that ends up doing, from what I've heard, and Casey will talk about this, Vegetable Police will talk about this too, it tends to just recalibrate the digestive system a bit too much, to where it's very challenging to reintegrate back into solid food. So if you were committed to becoming like a juicerian, sustaining on only juice, then yeah, you could go that route, because you could live indefinitely on it. However, I don't know anybody personally that's done that. So there are people out there who claim to have, and I don't doubt a lot of them. But me personally, I'm still ready to chew on things. So I'm not quite ready to go that route. So as far as a remedy to help recalibrate and shift our body, I find it's much better to go on like a whole fruit cleanse and still incorporate juice. There's nothing wrong with having juice, but just wanting to keep that fiber consistent so that your digestive system doesn't completely, lose itself, and you have to repopulate everything. And so that's just kind of my perspective there. So yeah, we'll just move on to why dry fasting. So Forgive the sort of simple writing here. Like I said, I'm gonna be fixing this up and making it a bit better. But this will give a good overview in the sense that I find dry fasting to be the ultimate healing tool. And it doesn't cost any money. You don't have to go anywhere. It's completely free. But it's also arguably one of the highest risk healing tools, especially given where we are. So I think as we continue to unlock these layers within our body and we start to step back into our fullest potential, or at least a higher potential, then we'll be able to do these things much more easily. But when we're coming from a disease-ridden reality where we've been injected with all sorts of experimental poisons and traumatized consistently and eaten all sorts of garbage and all of that, even if we've been cleansing ourselves for years, there's still a lot of work to do. And even energetically, the energetics of the space, it's like collectively we're all kind of bound to each other. So even if we are shifting towards a cleaner way, if collectively we're still in that muck and that dirt, then it's going to hold us back a little bit, or it's just going to make it a lot more challenging. So that's why there's more risk involved. One, the belief that it's risky makes it riskier, but two, just our body's been worn down. It's only capable of handling so much. And fasting of any sort, but especially dry fasting, is a huge stressor, and it's a stress for a reason. It's like when we're strength training, right? Like we're putting our body under stress. Any type of training that we do, it's going under some sort of stress, but that helps us to get better. It helps us to improve. We go through the stress and then we go through the healing, and then we're stronger, right? So this is the same sort of thing, but you wouldn't want to go straight into a weightlifting gym and throw on, the biggest weights and try and bench press that right away. That would be foolish, and you could hurt yourself. So it's the same thing with dry fasting. It's not something to just immediately step into and say, okay, I can do this just because I learned about it intellectually. It's something that really has to be integrated and practiced and incrementally move through, going through those various forms of fasting that I mentioned. And then even when we start the dry fasting, taking that extremely slow, not trying to jump too quickly into too long of a term, and just each time we do it, giving plenty of time to recover, rest, and then we can go back if we want to go deeper into that. So as far as the types of states that our body goes into when we fast, and this is with water fasting as well. It doesn't happen quite as quickly, but it's fairly quickly. It's within the first 24 to 48 hours, I believe, we go into ketosis. And that simply means fat burning. So our toxins are stored in our fat. The people who are obese, overweight, it's not that they just eat too much, it's they eat too much toxic stuff. And when we eat toxins, our body can only do so much at once. And that's another reason why fasting is so beneficial, because it pauses on this consistent digestive routine that we've been fed literally to do constantly. So when we're always eating, 3 meals a day and snacks in between, and no breaks, and any concept of fasting, which the fasting concept used to be quite a thing in our culture, in our society. It used to be very consistent within religious practice and all sorts of ways. But in today's day and age, people think you're crazy when you say, "Oh, I haven't eaten today." So when we're always in that state of continuously shoving things down our throat, and if that stuff is garbage, our body doesn't have time to process all the toxins that it's dealing with and digest everything so that those toxins don't accumulate and putrefy in our gut, and kill us much faster. So it has to triage. It has to go towards high priority things to take care of. And one way that it sort of puts things to the side to take care of later is encasing it in fat cells. This is actually very similar to what happens with cancer as well. It's an encapsulation of the problem. It's an encapsulation of what's causing the issue so that the body can address it later when it's not dealing with this toxic overload. But if we never give it a break, and if we go to the hospital and they feed us garbage and just give us these pharmaceuticals that are just more toxins, then the body eventually gets worn down, eventually can't do it any longer. So anyway, coming back to ketosis, that's what helps to sort of eliminate those toxins stored in those fat cells. And that's why it's important to take it slow, because when we start to do this, sometimes the toxin release can be a bit too much. So it's important to really listen to the body. And I'll get into the warning signs of like when to stop a dry fast, and really any fast, but specifically on dry fasting, because we are removing toxins. It is coming out of our fat cells. So that's ketosis. And then autophagy is the other stage that we get to, which is about 48 hours into it, perhaps a bit longer. And it literally means like self-consumption. So that's when our body starts to target, because it hasn't received traditional nourishment that it's been used to digesting and using. It starts to look to old, dying, damaged cells to target as well, because that's the only thing it's working with. So this has this amazing ability to help regenerate certain areas that may have been neglected, not intentionally, but just circumstantially, because the body wasn't able to free up time to address this in forever. So people have reported crazy things. It's amazing reading testimonials of people who go deeper into fast. And I will say that most of the truly amazing stuff goes in the deeper, more extended fast. But even shorter ones can have some pretty miraculous results of what the body can step into and do when we get out of its way. So autophagy is a very powerful tool to step into, and it really helps to it's like doing spring cleaning. It's helping to remove and take care of all of that. So yeah, and then one of the reasons, and this is often said about dry fasting, is that the rate at which our body goes into these stages, and the way that it moves and addresses things, is roughly 3 times faster than water fasting. So water fasting is an incredible tool, but to get to the same level of internal cleansing, you can either do a 3-day dry fast, or you can do a 9-day water fast. And for most people, time is a seemingly, even though it's not, but it's a seemingly limited item that we have, and we've always got stuff to do. And, I don't like just sitting around all the time. So to have that sort of efficiency part of it as well is one of the reasons why I lean this direction when I do fast. And then another benefit of dry fasting is, so imagine it's like we literally are draining the swamp. And of course I love that phrase. And but imagine you have a pool of water, and it's dirty. It's a dirty pool of water, and that pool of water represents your body, and the dirt represents the toxins in your body. So a lot of people who are very anti-dry fasting, and there are lots of people out there, and for good reason. I'll say, just a quick side note, there's a good reason not to just idly suggest this, and there's a good reason why people are afraid of this. People have seen friends and loved ones die from these kind of practices when they're done carelessly, when they're not done properly, because it is extremely dangerous to do, especially if you're not ready for it. So one of the things that people will say is that the solution to pollution is dilution, which is true in so many ways. It is very true. But is it the most effective solution? So going back to that example of the pool, the dirty pool, say you want to clean that pool. Now you can take fresh water and you can run fresh water into the top of that pool, and it's going to slowly, over time, the toxins are going to bleed out and the pool is going to get lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter. But you can imagine, given the depth of the pool and the intricacy of our body and all the different layers that we have within it, that will take quite a long time to dilute enough to push these toxins through. So what if, instead of adding fresh water to the pool, you drained the pool entirely? Wouldn't that clear it a lot faster? And you might ask, well, what do you do when you drain the pool? It's just going to have a toxic sludge at the bottom. So where is that going to go? It doesn't have anywhere to move. And that's another argument that people have against dry fasting, is you're not moving the toxins anywhere. You're just concentrating them and leaving them stagnant. But that's another little like magical part about our body that modern quote unquote science hasn't really captured this that much, but it is something that I believe wholeheartedly, and I've experienced the symptoms of things like this happening. So when we get to that state, and when our body recognizes that the toxins are sort of trapped at the bottom of the pool that's being drained, the cells turn on this, like, sounds fantastic, but they turn on this like furnace essentially, and they are literally burning up this toxic load. They literally are able to shift that and burn it up, and that's how it can be expelled through the breath. And we'll get into breathing, because breathing is so important within this process, as you can imagine. So through that, it helps to accelerate that process of cleansing and clearing these toxins away. So yeah, that's another reason why I like to do dry fasting. And then another one is, so with water fasting, it's good to be very careful about how much, as I mentioned, like how quickly you're drinking water. You definitely want to be drinking enough water if you're doing that. I don't suggest trying to do like halfway. Don't halfway water fast, halfway dry fast. That's not good for the body. You kind of have to go one or the other within a short period of time, or within that period of time. You can, and I'll get into this too, you can alternate from dry fasting to water fasting and keep going. It's not suggested to go the other way from water fasting to dry fasting. And it's definitely not suggested to go back and forth between water fasting, like a day of water fasting, a day of dry fasting, day of water fasting, or even in the same day. That's not suggested either. But the one of the risks with water fasting, and even if you're doing it carefully and sipping slowly, you are going to be losing minerals. You are going to be losing things, electrolytes and other layers within the body that you don't lose when you're dry fasting. Not to mention you're going much longer periods of time in order to get the same levels of healing. So it's it's just not as in my experience, when I've water fasted, my muscles feel incredibly drained. My recovery feels a lot longer. This is what is it, day 3, I think, day 3 or 4 of my refeed. I can't even remember. But I haven't felt that same feeling of like, of course it was tiring, and the first day was, the energy started to come back and my body started to recalibrate. But after a long water fast, and the longest water fast I've done was 9 days, I believe. So yeah, so even after just 9 days, I felt very, very just drained for about a week afterwards. And I'm feeling much better after just a few days from dry fasting, because there's not as much of that mineral loss. So just in my personal experience, it feels much better to come out of a dry fast than it does a long water fast. And I think it's due to that layer of the minerals. So yeah, that's that. And then the sort of one of the biggest benefits of dry fasting and what we're learning about consistently is that so much of what we attribute to some randomly named disease by some fancy sounding name or some scary sounding whatever, it's all related to some parasite or another, some different form of parasite. And of course, mainstream doctors will deny that and they'll say whatever, but the root cause is very similar in so many cases. And these parasites can't live. They are not as hardy as we are. Our body is capable of sustaining perhaps indefinitely without anything, but of course we have to get up to that point. But it's certainly capable of sustaining longer than most of these parasites. And if we train it, it can sustain much, much longer than any of these parasites can survive. They don't go through this process. They're not divinely connected where they can go into deeper levels of activation. So they have their limits. So if we can outlive them, they die off. It's as simple as that, and there's an effect of the sort of, there's a double effect of giving the body the ability to target these parasites much more easily in a dry fast as well. Because during autophagy, your it's in stress mode. It's like, okay, something's wrong. We've kind of like got to figure out what's going on. We're pumping white blood cells. We're up in the immune system. We're recalibrating things to make sure they work properly. Your army is getting armed. It's getting ready, locked and loaded. And also during that time, because you're eating or you're not drinking anything, your blood is becoming thicker. And this is where it can present some risk. But the reward behind that effect is that the parasites use our blood to navigate our body. They go around all sorts of different spaces. And when they detect danger, they'll retreat. They'll go run and hide. They'll go find some space where they can get away. So if you cut down on their pathways or their ability to travel as quickly, it gives your body a much better chance of addressing them. So that's another huge benefit of that. But, again, quite risky. So we'll get more into that. So, let's see. Before we get into the prep, I want to make sure we kind of just cover. Okay. Yeah. So I start with that. So here's the prep of what I'd suggest, or what I've found to be helpful for me, and what I've learned from others who have gone much longer. So in order to go through a dry fast, we need to have some bodily reserves. We need to have some layers of self, to really essentially eat off of while we're in that state. Because when we have reserves, our body can utilize those efficiently and tends to before the parasites can. So it's not something that I would suggest for someone who's very thin to try dry fasting, especially not more than like 3 days. It can be very risky, and that's where people have died and gone through complications and been too, I don't know, like arrogant, I guess, or, just not able to see where they were and have hurt themselves that way. But I do add a disclaimer, unless you've mastered pranic living to some degree. And I do believe that there are people out there who have done that and are very capable of sustaining on very little to nothing for very long periods of time, who don't weigh much at all. But that's not very common. It's not very common at all. So again, we have to be very honest with ourselves and be honest with where we are and what our body's like and how we're adjusting to things. And it doesn't mean that if we're not ready to do that in this moment, that we have to write off dry fasting forever, but just keep it in the back of the mind. Like, okay, my body's not quite there for that. I'm not quite in that space for that. Or maybe I can just dip my toes in for 1 to 3 days kind of thing. But just be very careful when you do that, because it can lead to deficiencies and things like that too. Any type of fasting can. I don't really recommend long fasting for anyone who doesn't have like a good reserves to them. And I had I had that moving into this, so I was this wintertime was a bit more flexible as far as what I was eating. So there was more of me to work with. And so it was another good opportunity to step into that. But just wanted to mention that. And then, yeah, make sure you are experienced in fasting. I'd say start with the fruit, as I mentioned, and then move on to the water or the oran. Master those for at least 3 days, but potentially longer before you even begin to think about doing a dry fast. And I'll say that I don't recommend anyone doing intermittent dry fasting. I did that for a while where I was like, okay, from this window to this window, I'm not going to eat or drink anything. I don't think our body's really as happy with that back and forth as I've mentioned before. So when we're hydrating, when we're drinking water or fluids of any sort, whether that's juice or water or oran, it's good to be consistent with that and get at least a gallon in per day. Depending on your size, is going to be a little bit more or less. And I'd suggest that for anybody, unless you're in that heightened state of chronic living where you don't need as much, but those are few and very far between. Don't assume that you are if you're really not, because that's where people can get in trouble. So yeah, so I don't suggest intermittent dry fasting, but you can sort of practice with embarking on different levels of fasting and going deeper into that. And once you feel, you've gotten the other types of fasting down pat, then and you have enough reserves to work with and you feel comfortable with the knowledge you've acquired, definitely do a lot of research within this. Trevor's channel is phenomenal for learning stuff. His Telegram group is great for asking questions or for searching for things. And then there are lots of other places. Like I mentioned, there's lots of literature in sort of the Russian reality that you can find. Dr. Filanov, I think, is one of the modern pioneers in that space. But there have been many Russians that came before him that have helped a lot of people within that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of information you can find to help you out as far as like learning more details and what to do, because I'm not going to be able to share everything here. I'm just going to do my best to summarize it. But yeah, definitely be well researched when you do something like this. And so I said, when starting to dry fast, start with 1 day with prep, refeed. So yeah, don't like try and, I'm going to do 1 day dry fast and then I'm going to take a half day break and then I'm going to do a 3 day dry fast. You need to have plenty of time to prepare, to refeed and take a break, give your body time to rest. I like to envision, being in two different modes. There's cleansing and then there's rebuilding. And we got to be honest with ourselves and where we are. Are we in a cleansing mode? Are we in a rebuilding mode? And it's not really good to just quickly go back and forth between these two. Just simply that. It's good to dedicate to, okay, this is a rebuilding phase. I'm going to spend the next however many months, making sure that my mineral levels are high and that I'm sufficient in everything, and I've got reserves or whatever, before going deep into a cleanse. And there are other types of cleanses too that don't require fasting, but that's what we're talking about today. And then when you do start a dry fast, then set your record and watch the signs. But at least in my experience, I haven't pushed more than like two days increasing at a time. So I started with just a couple days and then moved to 3 and then 4, 5, and then 6. And so, yeah, I've just been pretty much 1 day increasing every single time. And I'm very happy with that process. And I don't intend on doing it really. I mean, we'll see how I feel the next time, but I'm happy with that incremental. So just take it slow. So to prep, it's not good to just jump straight from processed mucus forming garbage into a long fast. Ideally, you're going to be an extended time, ideally years. I mean, if health is truly our priority and we're wanting to get to that space, then we should be focusing on making sure that what goes into our mouth is not continuing to just destroy us. And of course, don't beat yourself up. We all have our moments, and we go through these things, and it's a journey to get there. And we have various avenues and ways that can help us. But just in general, keep that eye on the prize, and don't be negligent and just think, oh, I can just fast it away and be done with it. Because that sort of swing back and forth can create issues for sure. So we want to have our mucus pretty much eliminated or reduced considerably within our body. This helps everything to move as it needs to, and our body to address what it can while fasting. Now, this is something that I've only barely experimented with, but that's iodine. Trevor's real big into iodine protocols. There's a lot of really compelling testimonies out there of people who have solved all sorts of things by using high dose iodine. I have scratched the surface with researching it. I have used iodine before and didn't really notice anything profound, but it also wasn't something I did consistently with absolute certainty, nor did I have something hugely ailing me that I could notice going away or being addressed. But some people, without even fasting, do address a lot of things with high iodine. And iodine is something that most of us are severely lacking because it's quite depleted within us. It's not something that is naturally found in the soil any longer, and so using external sources is advised. But I go the route of the Irish sea moss and seaweeds and things of that nature to get iodine in, as opposed to the Lugol's iodine, which is what a lot of people use. But I'm not knocking that practice. It might be something that's quite helpful, and who knows, maybe it's something I'll experiment with more. So yeah, just continuing on. So I said here, and you've got this is going to be based on your experience and how quickly your body adjusts, and what your diet was like before you started to fast. But I said approximately 1 to 1.5 ratio of prep days to fast days. So if you were going to fast for, say like I did for 6 days, then you'd want to prep for 4 days. Because 6 is 1.5 times 4. So that just gives your body a step up to really take care of and do and prep and get ready for that moment. So here I kind of outline like what I recommend doing, and this is something that I think we all should be doing, and I strive to do on a regular basis. But hydration is key. Obviously, on a dry fast, we want to make sure that our body's hydrated, because our body's going to get the priority use of the water. So if we've got it in the cells and it's hydrated, the parasites aren't going to have access to it. They go for the dirty reservoirs, the stuff that's sort of just floating around, and that's what they have more access to, where our body gets first priority. So if we're hydrating it first, it's giving it a longer window to hold fast, to hold strong, so that you can let these little buggers die off. So I say here, at least 1 gallon or 4 liters a day, slightly more or less depending. Sip slowly. Don't, as I mentioned, don't deplete your minerals while you're doing that. And then you can choose between either spring water, fresh juice, or orange. Choose between water, fresh juice, or orange. Those are the 3 forms of hydration that, I don't really know any others, but, and I find orange to be the most hydrating, juice to be a really close second. Water is great. Water can be great, but there's a lot of discussion around like distilled water and versus spring water, and I don't really want to get into a huge conversation about water. But just in general, distilled water isn't going to have that electrolyte uh, boost when you're drinking it. Juice and orange are both going to have those in it. So you're going to be maintaining that electrolyte load. Whereas if you're drinking a copious amount of distilled water, it's possible, especially if you're drinking it too quickly, you're going to be losing it at a faster rate. So one thing that Josh X does, who big shout out to him as well. I love his work and love his gnosis, and he's taught me so much on fasting. Though I don't think he's a big advocate of dry fasting, just due to the risk. Um, but what he does with his distilled water now, he used to just recommend just drinking plain distilled as the easiest and simplest form of pure water. But what he does now is he adds an electrolyte mixture to his distilled water. So he actually takes the compound. I don't know exactly what it is, but I asked Grok, the XAI, what's the, because he mimics the electrolyte composition of coconut water. Because coconut water is, like, fun fact, you can use coconut water as a blood transfusion if you need to, which is miraculous. So it is the electrolyte mixture is very close to ideal state of our body and our blood. So having an electrolyte mixture mimicking coconut water is just amazing by itself. So if you can get that, that's like, that's gold. But if you can make a similar electrolyte mixture to put in distilled water, if that's all you have access to, then that's something that you could consider. Now, this is not something that I've tried, but I am intrigued by the idea, though I don't have a huge need for it here, because I do have access to a good spring, and here there's good well water as well that's not treated with any chemicals or anything. So, the water coming out of the living earth is going to have it's going to have mineral content. It's going to have electrolytes in it. It's going to have that living energy, life force in it. Distilled water is going to be extremely pure, but it won't have that extra goodies to it. So that's what he does, is he adds it to it. So just a suggestion in case anybody wants to try that. It's like just ask an AI and it'll tell you the composition of coconut water. And I even asked Grok, I was like, how would I make water with a similar electrolyte composition as coconut water? And it told me. It gave some suggestions on, like, magnesium supplement and potassium supplement and all of that to add to it. So anyway, that's the hydration portion to prep. And then what to eat on those preparation days is definitely be doing a frugivore, raw hydrating fruits, veggie fruits like cucumber, tomato. Veggies are okay, but they're harder to digest, not as water rich. So I tend to avoid most veggies, especially when preparing for a fast. And then soft leafy greens are great as well. And then limited nuts and seeds. So the frugivore diet, that's the best way to step into a simpler way of being, is to eat what we're truly designed to eat, which is a good thing to do anyway. But if you're not, then now's a good time to prepare for the fast. And then during that time, little to no salt. And if you do salt, only the highest quality. Salt's like that. It's another topic that's interesting, because some people swear that we need salt in some forms, and we do need sodium, but do we need sodium chloride? I'm not really sure. If you are going to eat it, make sure it's the highest quality, but I'd recommend just abstaining from it for at least those few days prior to the fast, because it's dehydrating, and it's kind of good to just step away from it. At least in my opinion. Some people think that it adds electrolyte boost if you use it. So do some research on your own and make your own decision there. I find dulse flakes are a great replacement. I haven't gotten those in a while, but they are they're a good sort of replacement. Dulse is a type of seaweed, so you're getting that iodine boost. You get a little bit of that salty, if you don't mind, that seaweed kind of taste to it, but it is quite delicious to add to it, and you're getting these other benefits too. Excuse me just a second. And yeah, nothing cooked. So, um, you know, any cooked food is just going to dehydrate us. We're cooking the water out of it. If we're trying to hydrate ourselves, then you're counterproductive. Same thing with dried fruit. You know, dried fruit is essentially cooked fruit, and um, yeah, best to avoid dehydrating things. And cooked food, especially, is very difficult to pass through the digestive system. And during this time, it's essential that we be cleaning our digestive system out entirely. And I'll get into that more so in a second. So, and then Trevor really recommends, because potassium is often the electrolyte that we're most lacking. So go for potassium rich foods while we're eating that way. And I went ahead and listed all of the frugivore foods that are shown to have high potassium. So that's bananas, dates, coconut water, coconut meat, oranges, cantaloupe, kiwi, cucumber, kale, spinach, chard, and beet greens. But with the greens, all of those are fairly dense. So if you are going to do those during this time, I'd recommend juicing them, just to get that, you know, to really extract everything from it without cooking it. Um, so yeah, but greens are great. Greens are great to have on a regular basis. They have tons of minerals as well, which brings me to my next section of minerals are very important. And when we are fasting, we're relying on our reserves of minerals and everything, but minerals especially. So during this time, and really prior to it, CMOS, Josh X recommends kombu. He makes like he like boils it and makes like a ice cube with the gel that comes from it. Other sea vegetables have lots of minerals. Now, one I got from Trevor was blackstrap molasses, which you want to make sure if you use this that you get a good quality of it, because, you know, depending on where, yeah, you just want to get organic for sure, and make sure it doesn't, you know, trust the source of where you're getting it from. But molasses is essentially the minerals extracted from the sugarcane. So in order for them to make the processed white table sugar, they extract the molasses out of it, and that's essentially all the good minerals. So an easy source of concentrated minerals in a fairly natural form. I mean, obviously it's not its whole form. It has been processed. It's not going to be as ideal as like drinking sugarcane juice, which is phenomenal if you've never had it before. But molasses is a great thing to have, and it's very inexpensive too. So that's something that people can get into. I tend to throw at least like a tablespoon or so. I don't really measure it, but I just put enough in my smoothie to where it's not overwhelming in the taste. But since molasses is kind of sweet, it goes along with a sweet smoothie, and so that's how I eat it. Or sometimes just eat, I'll mix it in tea, sweeten my tea that way. So that's a great thing to use. Juiced vegetables are phenomenal for minerals. Yeah, they're great. Vegetable broth, if you don't have a juicer, you want to go that route. Some people say that the extraction from cooking vegetables is better. Some people say juicing it is better. Either way, you're going to get quite a bit of minerals from the broth. So that's a great way to do it. Just if you don't know how to make vegetable broth, it's literally as simple as just taking good vegetables and throwing them in some water and simmering it for a few hours or even overnight. Excuse me. And so that's a great source of minerals. Leafy greens also, but again, recommend juicing those. And then there's a product that I use, and I haven't used this like super regularly. To be honest, I haven't noticed anything profound with using it. That's kind of like consistent with me. I'll get something and I'm like, oh, let's try this, and then I'm not really consistent with it, and so I don't really notice anything. So maybe I'll be more consistent with it. But it sounds like a good idea, and the testimonies of people who use this stuff are awesome to read. But it's called Trace Mineral Ocean something. Anyway, you can find other supplements out there that are all about the trace minerals. Just, you want to find a good brand, a good source, and check the reviews and all of that. But that's going to have a good amount of minerals that you just, with mine, it's essentially concentrated seawater. So it's ocean water concentrated with the sodium chloride removes, and it doesn't taste very good. But yeah, I just add some drops to water, and down it goes. And so I do that when I do that, especially if I get muscle cramps ever, because it does have a high magnesium, and that is something that I have noticed it helping very quickly. I don't really like taking isolated chemistry magnesium, though it can be very helpful in times. So I'm not knocking it. Um, just be careful of the type and how you use it. But that's a form that's, relatively natural. Like I said, it's just concentrated seawater, and it has high magnesium in it. So I've noticed that helping with cramps right away. So a good thing to have on hand. And yeah, so those are good ways to load up on minerals. And then so this is something that I still haven't done it myself, but I used to be more against it. However, I'm sort of shifting my perspective around blood testing. I think that it can be a very helpful way to get an insight into the levels within our body, especially electrolyte levels. So if you are concerned, or you're just not sure, or you have the availability to do that, get a blood test and check your electrolyte levels. Check your B12 and your vitamin D are good to check as well. Those are often very low. Magnesium's often low. I think potassium's often low as well. Um, so yeah, just check the whole panel that I listed, and perhaps more. Like I said, it's not something that I've experienced. In the US, it's just kind of a pain to do something like that if you don't have traditional healthcare. So I would, if it were inexpensive and I had access to it. In some countries, they even just offer it for free, which is nice. So anyway, that's a good idea to check on your levels prior to jumping into a fast, because then you'll know, okay, is my body ready to do this, or am I just going to be depleting myself? Because there's fasting, which is going to encourage healing, and then there's fasting, which is going to lead to deprivation and depletion. And one's helpful and one's quite harmful. So it's important to kind of figure out where we are, at least to some degree. And blood testing can be a good way to do that. So in regards to the location, ideally you're going to want to have something while you're dry fasting. It's important to pay attention to, like, what's the forecast going to be, where am I, and how's this going to go about. So as far as temperature goes, between the 50s and 60s is ideal. So low 50s at night, 60s during the day, but no warmer than that. And even a little bit cooler is okay, but hovering around that spot, and because once you start getting into the 70s, at least in my experience, that effect that I've noticed, where the furnaces turn on and these toxins are starting to burn off, your body will get very hot, and it can be uncomfortable. If you're not in a cooler environment. Sometimes the greatest relief that I had in this recent one were the ability to step outside and breathe the cool air, and just be in that cooling presence, and go walk down to the lake and be near the cool water and lay down on the cool ground. Whereas the last time I did it was in Mexico, and it was very hot, and I had no relief. It was just discomfort all the time, in that way. So I agree. This is straight out of Trevor's recommendations, but I'd agree wholeheartedly with that. And then high humidity is also ideal as well. So he recommends 70+%. And the reason why, you might say, well, if we're just absorbing a lot of water through our lungs through the humidity, then are we really dry fasting? And it's like, again, our body gets to prioritize the use of the water first, and especially in that form. So when it's coming through our lungs, our body's, it's going to clutch that water so tightly, and it's not going to let any parasite or anything besides basic essential functions have that water. So that's another layer that allows us to go deeper and longer on a dry fast, which the longer we go, the more likely we're going to be ridding these ailments and these parasites. So high humidity is very helpful. And then I say have entertainment items prepared and available. So have your shows, your movies, your audiobooks, music, reading, anything that you want to do during that time. And I talk about this in the next section for the fast itself, but I'll just mention it. It's ideal to let your body just rest and not be doing things, not be watching things, and even reading and listening to things. All of that requires energy. Any conscious effort requires energy, and that's taken away from the body's ability to heal itself. However, there's a balance. There's a balance because it's also can be quite maddening, literally, to be in that state and to be unable to sleep, which I'll get into, and not have anything else to focus on. So perhaps you are more spiritually in tune than I am, and can sit there in extreme physical discomfort, unable to sleep, and even sit in a meditative pose and be there without all of that for extended periods of time. But I had intentions of keeping all devices off for as long as I could. I only made it about 24 hours, maybe 30. No, it was a little over 24 hours before I was like, okay, my mind is going crazy. So then I just did it in spurts, and I took it in. I just found the balance, the happy medium. So when I needed to give my mind a little rest by a distraction, then I would, but I use it kind of like medicinally, where this is, I'm not just going to continuously do it. Though I did watch quite a few shows. So yeah, all to say is just find your balance within that, but have everything prepared beforehand so that you're ready for which way you go. So have your meditation space set up, have your bed be really comfortable, have everything, lounge, outdoor area, tent, whatever set up. Just make sure everything is 100% prepared. And so the night before the fast, still in the preparation, you want to take a gentle colon cleanse. So ozonated magnesium, or the brand Oxy powder, is the one that I use. And it is a very gentle laxative. And you take it the night before. And supposedly this was the formula made by Nikola Tesla to help people cleanse their bowels. And I think it was in response to some of his frequency devices that actually that did help people heal considerably, but made people shit themselves a lot too, because it was just like immediate release of toxins. So I think he formulated this stuff to help prepare people's bodies for these deeper frequency healing technologies. So anyway, in my experience, I've used it quite a bit. I don't use it regularly, but it's something when I go on a fast, or I've used it for liver cleanses and things like that. It's very gentle. And so, yeah, take that the night before. And then the day of the fast, this is something that I don't see a lot of people recommending doing this, or at least not as rigorously as Trevor does. But I did it fairly rigorously, but I don't think I even did it enough as I should have. So the day of the fast, you want to do enemas. So wake up and do an enema until it runs clear. So that might take 3, 4, 5 plus times of running an enema, which is kind of tedious. It's not a fun process to do over and over again, but when you get in the practice of it, it's not so bad. But you want to do that until it runs clear, because that is meaning that your colon is very clean, or as best as you can from that end, and then the oxy powder is coming from the other end. So you're giving your digestive system the best chance to be as clean as possible, Because if it's not, for that entire duration, whatever food is left behind is just going to be sitting in your gut. It's just going to be sitting there, and that that's another toxin that your body has to deal with. So these can lead to things where you'll need to break the fast early, intense nausea, discomfort, things of that nature if this is not addressed. So I think this is a really, really important thing to do prior to a longer dry fast. For just a 3 days or less, it doesn't really matter as much. But anything longer than, I'd say, 4 or 5 days, then it's really important to do something like this. And then after the enemas, drink about a liter of coconut water or some other high potassium juice. For don't chug it, drink it. Spend 30 minutes drinking it slowly before you begin the fast, and this is just going to help to replenish anything that you might have lost from the enemas and set you off on a clean slate to really get started on the fast. And then at that point, you start the timer, and you're off. So yeah, the fast itself. So maybe I should include this in the preparations, but you want to make sure you have zero obligations or responsibility and a 100% clear schedule, nothing going on, nothing needed to do, no one needing your attention. Inform friends and family that you're going to be away. Best to be away from everyone if you can. Ideally out in nature. Trevor, he'll go, he did his last fast out in, I can't remember the name of it, but the islands pretty far off the coast of Portugal, but in the Atlantic. And that's where he was for the whole time. So he goes on like far off distant places and tries to find the ideal climate and ways to extend the fast in the greatest ways. But nature is really a wonderful thing to be around, and people, especially people who don't understand fasting at all, it's just going to make that more challenging. So make sure if you are around people that they're prepared for what you're going to be doing, and that they're not going to freak out when they haven't seen you for however long, or be too worried about you, or come try and force you to go to the hospital or any of that kind of stuff. Because to somebody who has no idea, it's quite scary, and for good reason. It is kind of scary to do. It's not something to be taken lightly. So I mentioned lots of rest. That's obvious. Like, we don't need to be doing lots of movement. Don't need to be having lots of things to do. So lots of rest. But I'll add, it is good to do gentle movements each day. So Trevor recommends jumping jacks. Rebounding is also great for just some gentle movements. Go on some walks, take you'll be taking everything slowly the deeper you go into it. So just listen to the body and how much it needs to do. But if we do some movements, it's going to help that lymphatic waste to move and shift, so it's not getting too caught in any one place. And that helps to extend the fast quite a bit. So I really enjoyed the Human Garage. So this is something that Lila tuned me into recently, and I've so enjoyed learning from them and seeing this. This is kind of a side note, but Human Garage is basically fascial movement. So you're locking. If you're not familiar, the fascial system is the connective tissue that holds your entire body together. Your everything to your everything is all connected through your fascial system. So fascia is extremely important, and oftentimes it gets locked up and discombobulated and twisted in all sorts of different ways. And, it's affected energetically through our emotions and all sorts of different things. So, because it's all connected. So the Human Garage is very similar to the work that Lila does physically, which is called Rolfing, which is all about fascial release with a practitioner. So somebody who's doing body work to target different areas. And she was so generous to give me the series of Rolfing, which was phenomenal. I saw huge improvements within my body and just unlocked so many different things. However, the Rolfing can be quite expensive, and it requires somebody else's help to do it. So the great thing about Human Garage, and she's really enjoyed, knowing her mind with it and how she knows the body, her recommendation comes at a very, very high point for me. So the fact that she recommends this and sees it, well, it says a lot to me. And since I've started using it, I've really enjoyed it. I've only just gotten started, but they have all these different movements that are essentially just different positions and different breathing patterns and different movements to unlock the fascial system. And some of them, you wouldn't maybe not necessarily want to do while you're fasting, mostly because of the more intense breathing. But there's one routine that I really enjoyed, and I think anyone who's got anything should try it. Because you can even do it laying in bed, and that's what I would end up doing whenever I just felt overwhelmed or just wanted to even to go to sleep. This really helped me. This really helped me a lot. So it's called the organ reset, and I included the link here, which I'll have in the document. And they have a couple different versions of the same video. It looks like, from what I've seen, the videos all seem to be about the same, but it's worth checking out their whole channel because it's just full of great stuff. But this one is essentially just 8 movements that helps to reset your organs, and you're just placing your hands in different areas and putting slight pressure in certain areas to lock the fascial system, and then you're breathing. So while I did that, part of their movements, they do have mouth. They'll do like half nose breathing, half mouth breathing, and I'm sure there's a good philosophy that I can't remember as to why they do that. It probably helps with various things, but while dry fasting, you don't want to be mouth breathing at all. So I just shifted all of that to nose breathing. So yeah, I said that. Get outside as much as possible. Yeah, even sleep outside if you can. Set up a tent somewhere or go camping. And yeah, nature is a wonderful space to be. That grounding energy is one of the most powerful. I mean, that was huge for me. Like, I felt like quitting at one point, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go walk down to the lake, and I hadn't walked down there, and it's not that far. So I took Holly with me, and she's, because she doesn't need any verbal communication anyway. She's very telepathic, so she read me completely the whole time. And so we walked down to the lake, and just laying there on the ground, I did one of my favorite grounding routines, which is just simply to bow and place my forehead, place my ajna, my third eye, on the ground in front of me, and felt that sort of grounding energy course through me. And I felt a lot of pain sort of dispel in that moment. And then I just laid there. I laid there on the ground for however long, and listened to the birds. And yeah, it's hard to describe moments like that, because it's just one of those where it's so simple, but it's one of those that I don't know. Yeah, I'll remember those. I'll remember moments like that. They're very memorable because they're just so profound, just reconnecting with our true essence and getting rid of all these distractions of constantly eating and everything else. It really does shift so much. So yeah, recommend that for sure. And then one thing, this is the hardest part for me. This was the hardest part, is the sleep. And this is pretty common that people report that sleep is challenging when you do it. So when we are fasting, we are going through, your body's going to be pumping out cortisol, which that's essentially the driver, the signal that your body's saying, okay, go find water. You need water. Go find water. We don't have water, or even food. That cortisol can drive for that too. But specifically, on that note, just a side note, my physical hunger went away within a couple days. The thirst does kind of linger. Some people report that goes away as well. I haven't gotten to that point, but yeah. but the cortisol was there the whole time. And so I maybe got 2 to 3 hours of sleep each night, and it was very sporadic. You know, I might sleep for an hour and wake up and not be able to fall back asleep. And it is kind of torturous because you're just laying there and you're like, my body is so tired, but I can't, like, something in me is keeping me awake. So with those great challenges, we can experience greater hurdles to overcome. And it was a great practice. The whole thing was a great practice to taming the ego in so many different ways, because the ego is always trying to drive you to, like, hey, come on, you don't need to do this, like, just go drink some water, like, whatever, it doesn't matter. All these different things trying to drive me to break this or to end it early without any super physical need. And so to have that opportunity to really hold fast and say no, it's every time we do that, not just with fasting or anything, every time we say no to the ego's urges, we're growing stronger. We're growing stronger, and we're saying, like, no, you're not really running the show any longer. I'm not going to get rid of you because you're a part of me. So I acknowledge you. We don't need to ignore it, but we don't need to let it control the show. So it's a great practice in that, even though it's extremely challenging. Yeah, and so you want to avoid any fluid entering the mouth at all. Some people will do that, where they'll swish water and they say, as if thinking that will help. And when your mouth is really dry, it's very tempting. It's very tempting to swish water in your mouth and say, no, I won't drink it. And you can, and people can do it without drinking it, and that happens. And for a split second, your mouth will feel better. But then moments pass and the thirst becomes worse, because what this does is it triggers your body to say, oh, you found water. Okay, drink it. And if you're not actually going to drink it, then it's just going to make that sensation worse. So I don't recommend any bit of fluid entering the mouth. You don't need to brush your teeth or anything during this time, which that's a benefit I didn't list, but teeth health improve tremendously, especially going deeper. I mean, I noticed mine got quite a bit. Mine feel like stronger, and my gums feel like they're more lively, and my teeth feel a little bit whiter too. It's nothing like profound, though I've heard going deeper into like 8 to 10 plus days, that's where the teeth really change dramatically. So we'll see. But yeah, there's no need to brush your teeth because your body is taking care of all of that. So no need for water. Though I will say tongue scraping is arguably essential. So if you've never used a tongue scraper before, I prefer copper ones because they're naturally disinfected. You don't have to worry about them growing anything or weird stuff or whatever. And copper's great to have. But you just scrape your tongue. So I would do that probably twice a day, sometimes more, because your tongue does get kind of gnarly. It does taste pretty gross after a while, and the tongue is a pathway of elimination. It's one of the ways that our body excretes toxins, and so the tongue does get pretty gross. So a tongue scraper is great. Yeah, but then back to the water and contact with it. So there are people who do what's called a hard dry fast, which is 100% abstaining from contact with water. Absolutely. Not even touching it with your hands, your body, nothing. And some people who are hardcore would say that, the humidity wouldn't make it a hard dry fast. I disagree with that. And I don't really, fit in either category 100%. But people say a soft dry fast is when you are doing, like, you're brushing your teeth and you're swishing water and you're taking like baths and cold plunges and things, but you're just not drinking any of it. Now there are potential pros to taking cold plunges. I haven't ever done it, but a lot of the Russian literature and their practice, they do that because it will help to cool the body down in that sort of furnace mode, and it helps to push things where they need to go. That constricting. That's why cold plunges can be so beneficial. I haven't done it myself, so I can't speak too much more on that. And then, yeah, I already mentioned that. The more distractions you stay away from it, the more energy your body will have for healing. But it can also drive you crazy at times. Find the right balance. Balance is key. So when to break the fast? So going on a long fast requires great willpower. It does. You to commit to doing something so seemingly outlandish to organized society, and to step away from normal everyday life to dedicate to this. You've got to have willpower, even if it's just an intermittent fast. If it's a 1-day fast, a 36-hour fast, there's quite a bit of willpower involved with that. So to go deeper on an extended fast requires extreme willpower to do that. But you just have to be careful you have to be careful to taper that willpower so that you're not pushing past the warning signs. Because it can get, we can will ourselves to death if we do. We are that powerful. So it's finding that happy space. It might not feel so happy, but finding that where you're able to push through the annoying tendencies of the ego saying like, hey, you should stop this. No, this is not, you don't need to do this now. What do you need this for? Whatever the case may be, but not push past the warning symptoms where your body's like, okay, now it's really time. We've done all we can in this state, and we really need some help. We're not equipped in this moment to go further. So I'll list these, and these were again from Trevor for the most part, and I agree with them. So some signs to break the fast, and this can be on a water fast, but primarily on a dry fast. So if you have erratic heart rate, so ranging from 120 to 50, going all over the place, a roller coaster, excessive palpitations, any of those, time to break the fast. If it's consistent, if you're and this is while resting, I should clarify. If it's consistently above 120 beats per minute, and you're absolutely resting, and it does not drop down below that, you're pushing it. You're pushing it at that point. So that might be time to break the fast. If you're unable to move 50 feet or 15 meters, that means the blood has gotten too thick, and it's time to break the fast. If you struggle walking across the room, time to break the fast. If you have swollen, painful, or excessively hot kidneys, this is due to toxic overload. It's time to break the fast. If you are fainting constantly or blacking out constantly, it's time to break the fast. Now, slight dizziness is okay. If you've experienced fasting, you might know that when you stand up, especially if you stand up too quickly, you can get some dizziness. So that can happen. But just if it's excessive, where you can't even control that feeling, or you're just feeling it while you're motionless. So you have to be the gauge on your body and what it's telling you to push it far, but not push it too far, right? It's finding that happy medium space. And then vomiting or extreme nausea. This is also toxic overload. This means your body's not able to process what it's going through. It's not able to burn off all the toxins in time. And so, it's time to break the fast. The painful kidneys and the nausea, that's what I was feeling at the end of my fast, where I knew it was time. And it was, of course, perfect timing, because that's what I was planning on ending it anyway. I did push a little bit. I started feeling the nausea just an hour or a couple hours maybe before I ended it. And but it wasn't anything too crazy or too yeah. So I got to that point, and yeah, it was a good time to finish it. So I ended at the perfect time for my body in that moment, and I'm happy with that. So from there, what you can do, if you say you are on an extended dry fast and you have a particular ailment that you want to deal with, and maybe you set aside time at work or you traveled somewhere to have time to do that, and you really want to go deep to address whatever ailment you're targeting, but you don't feel like that length of time on the dry fast was long enough, and you got one of the warning signs that it's time to break the dry fast. What you can do, or if you just simply want to extend the cleanse even further, and that's what I ended up doing, was extending to a water fast for an additional day, additional 24 hours. So I listed steps here of what I'd recommend. You know, again, this is based on Trevor's recommendations, just kind of fleshed out a bit. So then you can swap over to just water, and it's pretty amazing. I mean, the difference. Yeah, you can ask Darth and Joanna how I looked and how I could speak differently, even just not eating anything at all, but just drinking water. So like my face started to come back to size, and my energy levels came back up quite a bit. You know, I was still fasting, but having that water flow through you is truly miraculous. So I really enjoy that process of having a day on just water and feeling the purity of like that rehydration, nothing else going into me except for the water. And the spring water too was so amazing that we're so fortunate to, it's about 40 minutes away. I wish it were a little closer, but there is a good quality spring not too far. And that's where I spent the day. It was a nice sunny day. Brought a chair. The spring is near a river, so I set up the chair near the river, had my water there, and I just enjoyed the sunshine. When it came to the time to start drinking, I drank slowly as I'm about to describe, and then felt the life force just flow through me. And it was really, really cool, like really neat to feel everything come back to life. Yeah, I don't know how else to say it. It's like everything sort of like swelled back up, and yeah, just became energized. And so having that time where if I were like so concerned about jumping straight to juice and other ways to break the fast, I wouldn't be as focused on the sensations of what the water can do. So I think it's a great thing to tack on, and you're getting huge benefit too, because you've just fasted for a long time. And if we're going with that 3 times as efficient as water fasting, so 6 days would be about 18 days of water fasting plus an additional day of water fasting, so 19 days potentially. So anyway, that's a suggestion there. Well, none of these are suggestions. Don't do any of this. This is all for entertainment. Yeah, let's see here. We'll jump over to Lee Marie Jacobs. Go ahead, sister. Yeah, did you want to share something? You just got to hit that same button again to open up your mic, and then you can jump in.
Hi there. I just had a quick question about water fasting. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, loud and clear. Go ahead.
Okay, great. What are your thoughts on including herbal teas on a water fast?
Yeah, it's I personally don't. I prefer just the purity of water only. But there's many schools of thought that if you're not triggering a certain level of sugar, and herbal teas, most herbal teas are not going to have any any sort of sugar for the body to digest, then you're not going to be breaking ketosis and essentially not breaking the fast to some degree. Some people say you're changing the fasting sort of makeup within the body. So I tend not to, just to go full into it. But it, if you're going, if that's the difference between you continuing and not, having an extra day of herbal teas is phenomenal. I mean, you're still flushing the body, you're still hydrating, you're still going to be getting a lot of benefit from doing something like that. Um, so yeah, it's that's my take on it, but you just gotta go with it how you like.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Thanks for the question. Yeah, and so just with the shifting into the water fast, that first sip is yeah, I mean, you can imagine barely being able to speak and mouth being so dry and sitting there with that beautiful, beautiful glass of water straight from the earth, taking that first sip. I thought about recording it, but it felt too intimate, or just felt too special, and I didn't really want to deal with the camera and all of that. So I just enjoyed it and took that first sip, and wow, felt that energy rush through, felt the whole baptism of water rushing through my veins. It was amazing. And I'll say it is tempting to gulp it, because, like, as I mentioned before about not triggering that thirst even more, when your body senses it's got access to water, it's like, okay, give me more. We need more of that. We're looking for that. We're hungry for that. But you've got to, it's ideal to resist that temptation to gulp, because if you do drink too much too fast, especially on longer ones, I mean, if it's just a 3-day dry fast, it's not as important. um 3 days or less, it's not you're not going to hurt yourself as much. But still, even with 3 days, it's better not to, in general, it's better not to chug. So resist the temptation to chug too much too quickly. And this is something that Trevor sort of got me onto initially, and then I kind of tweaked it. So if you have kidney pain on the fast, which means your kidneys are going through a deep level of cleansing, and best not to leave them in that state for too long, because we don't want to hurt them. But that means they're processing a lot of acidic waste. And one of the ways to quickly abate that feeling, and sort of cool them off, is to use uh, cheapest and simplest is baking soda, sodium bicarbonate. Just add a teaspoon of that in the water. Or a product that I've really enjoyed using for lots of things, because it's very alkalizing, but it's called 4-salts. And that's a combination of baking soda and 3 other mineral salts. Very alkalizing. So he suggested baking soda. I did the 4-salts, and I found relief right away. I did end up doing two scoops, though, not in the same jug of water, but just slowly over time, I just added some more to it. So yeah, that's something that I've quite enjoyed doing. But baking soda is very easy to get to, and should have a similar effect. Um, yeah, so you do that slowly for 30 minutes, like no more than a liter in that first 30 minutes, which is quite a bit of water, but it, that's a little bit more than what you normally should be drinking, but because your body's in such a dehydrated state, it can absorb that quicker. So that's the theory as to why drinking a little bit more for that first 30 minutes is ideal. And then shift to 16 to 32 ounces every hour or so, and keep that up for a bit until so what I did on that first day was I waited until, like, you can tell when your body's starting to get saturated and everything started to feel back to itself again to some degree. So you have to play with the quantities yourself, and figure out what's the best way, how it feels and if you need to add more or less water. But as long as you're not gulping it, you should be pretty good. So do another 32 ounce or liter for the next hour or two until you reach that level of hydration, and then scale it back to, half a liter or less per hour. But you definitely want to keep it up. You want to keep it up and make sure that you're nourishing the body with water, because that's what it's craving for, and it's going to be using that very effectively to flush things. Any of the toxins that it wasn't able to burn off, it's going to be moving those out. So it's a great time to flush the system as well. And one thing that sort of caught me by surprise, because I was fortunately Darth drove me to this spot, which I was very grateful for, because I was planning on driving myself, but I think it would have been fine, but it was probably best not. I was kind of loopy that day. So one thing that caught me off guard was the I forgot about the bowel activations. So even when we start drinking water, all of a sudden your bowels they activate quite intensely. And fortunately, in this park near this river where I was, there was a porta john that I was able to use because he had gone off to run some errands. He asked me if I was okay, just waiting, and I was. It was very wonderful in the sunshine, and I had everything that I needed. But fortunately, there was the porta john there, so I was able to make it to that before before releasing anything. But yeah, that's just another sign of why it's so good to cleanse the bowels as much as possible, because obviously I hadn't eaten or drank anything, with that in it for that length of time, and there was still not a ton, but it was a fair amount of real liquidy waste that came out of me. So the body's just like, okay, now it's time to purge. Let's purge. So expect that when you start back up. And yeah, and then I just say from there, then you just take the water fast into your own hands as far as water fasting goes. And I'm not really going to get too deep into water fasting, but it's fairly simple. Just maintain that whatever amount, roughly 12 to 16 ounces every hour, but it's going to be different depending on your level of hydration and where you are and your size and everything. You just want to be sipping water slowly throughout the day consistently to keep that hydration going and keep your body in that state, versus alternating between dry fasting and water fasting. And some people will even do where they'll wake themselves up in like the middle of the night to drink some water for a period of time before going back to sleep on a water fast, which might be good for an extended water fast. So yeah, just do that as long as you want to for the water fast, and pay attention to the warning signs there as well. But I probably could have gone for quite a bit longer on just water. I didn't feel the pain any longer. I felt good to continue, but I didn't want to keep going, so I didn't. And yeah, so that's that as far as like shifting to a water fast. And then if you are not going to shift to a water fast and you want to come back into refeed, so I made a note that this is where most people go wrong. So the time frame will depend on how long you fasted. And it also depends on how your body is suited and how comfortable you are with various forms. And it's going to be different for everyone. But roughly a 1-to-1 days to refeed to days fasted or less. I say just slightly under because I think that's how it came out when I did it. And this is again based on some of Trevor's recommendations in his group. I just modified him a bit. So this is kind of what I've done or what I'd recommend for a 6-day fast refeed. So if you were going to fast for 3 days, then you'd cut this length of time. You could cut this essentially in half, the refeed time. If you were going to do twice as long, then you would do twice as long. So you'd spread out day 1, day 2, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's clear as far as like how to modify that as need be. based on how long you've gone, because that's just more time that the body's been dormant. It hasn't been able to address what it needs to. So yeah, good to note there. So on the first day, it's pretty much what we talked about for doing the water fast. Don't gulp it. Take the first sip and just sit with that, and use the baking soda or 4 salts if you need to for the kidneys. And then from there, you can either stay with water a bit longer, or you can go to other liquids. But it's important, and this is an area that I've made mistakes in the past, or I don't know. There's no such thing as mistakes, but I've learned some things in the past, and learning more from Trevor, it makes a lot of sense. So jumping straight to sugar too quickly, fruit sugar and any form of sugar, is can be very shocking to the body that hasn't had that fuel reserve. When it's in that heavy, deep ketosis state, where it's in that fat burning state, if we go straight to sugar, it kind of gets like, it kind of goes crazy a little bit. Like not literally, but what happened in me in a previous fast was I broke it with watermelon juice, thinking, oh, watermelon juice is going to be very, very gentle, very easy to digest, very water rich. On paper, it sounds wonderful, but the amount of sugar in it led to some of the most extreme cramping in my calves, and that is something that trace minerals did help quite a bit to relieve that. But I was just like, why is this happening? Why wouldn't my body want this? Wouldn't my body want to have this first and foremost? So learning that the sugar might just be a bit too intense all at once, and scaling that back has made a lot of sense. And since doing that this time, I haven't had any cramping at all. So what I say here is, yeah, don't do sugar too quickly or at all at the very beginning. So some good options for liquid. Of course, you can keep with water, but if you want to start stepping into calories and food and things of that nature, then go with vegetable broth, or low sugar vegetable juice. There's a lot of vegetables that are high in sugar, especially when you juice them, like beets and carrots. I wouldn't recommend those at all. But you could do something like celery, or I don't know, other vegetables that don't have high sugar content. You could juice those, or just make the vegetable broth. That's what I ended up doing, was just making a big vegetable broth. You can make cucumber juice, which is great, low sugar and very hydrating, high in potassium too. And then just adding some lemon or lime to spring water to give just a touch of sugar, touch of minerals, touch of flavor, but tons of hydration. So that's great to start with. And then, maybe not the first one, but you could shift to something like very diluted coconut water, or very diluted juice even. But if you do fruit juice, just make sure it's extremely diluted, and sip it slowly and see how your body responds to it before going deeper into sugary things. So the rest of that day, then, yeah, you'd have the above examples. And then, yeah, like I mentioned, start doing more diluted juices, but just take it slow. You can always scale back. And then day 2, you'd aim for, that normal hydration goal of a gallon or 4 liters of liquid spread out slowly through the day. So not all at once, not gulping it. Even the second day, it's good to take things really slow. In general, it's good to take things slow, but especially when coming off of a fast. And then fresh juice is okay. Your body should be pretty acclimated to handling more sugar at this point. Everyone's going to be a little different, so it's not always going to be the same. So just take it, listen to your body, and take it slow. And then you can do water-rich soft fruit. So just make sure to chew them thoroughly. And then you can keep up with the vegetable broth or vegetable juice. And then he likes to add sea moss powder from the capsules in capsule form to water, so to get a good mineral boost. You could potentially add in the gel at this point, the sea moss gel. I don't think it would cause any issues. Um, herbal tea is great, and then I love nettle leaf tea. He's also a huge proponent of nettle leaf tea. My understanding of nettle leaf tea is it's a great facilitator of plant iron, which is very helpful for us to distribute all sorts of nutrients within our body. So it's a great time to have that as we're starting to bring back in nutrients from external sources. And then, yeah, you can do honey or molasses. Just careful not with too crazy of a sweetness all at once. But by that point, it should be pretty okay. And then day 3, again with the hydration, and the first half, the water rich fruit. The second half, you could do something like, denser fruits like apples or even bananas. They're kind of denser, or stuff that's not like as water rich in that. And then you could also do veggie fruits, so like cucumbers, tomatoes, and soft leafy greens. So you can make a salad or something like that. But I wouldn't do any salt. Um, Personally, I wouldn't do any salt that day. Um, and then yeah, just be careful not to overeat too quickly. It's gonna it's gonna trigger your body's hunger to want to eat a lot, and it's not necessarily your body's true hunger either. Depending on how long we fasted, we might not have addressed all the the parasites, the bacterial growth and stuff in our system, and it's essentially at this point it's a war in our system between the good guys, the good bacteria that help us digest things that we are designed to eat, and the bad guys, the people who are trying to drive us to eat the processed foods and all the crap and garbage. So in that war, you have to be very conscious and not let the baddies win to drive you into eating things that are just feeding those kind of parasites, those kind of bugs. So um, that's why prioritizing which foods to start with and how to go through that is very important, and careful not to overeat or eat too quickly either, because your stomach is very small and it can be very painful or uncomfortable if you eat too much too quickly. If you do, he suggests taking a natural laxative like that oxy powder, ozonated magnesium, or aloe, or another herbal laxative, but just make sure it's gentle. You don't want to be too crazy, too rough with yourself. Like some people do salt flushes for digestive flush. I think that would be a bit too harsh to do in this moment. So preferably the gentle laxatives if you do need that. But ideally, just don't do that. So you don't need to. And then day 4 comes along with hydration continued, fruit, and then pretty much everything raw vegan. If you're adding salt, take it slow. If you're adding overt fats like avocados and nuts, take it slow. Just eat a little bit and see how you feel, and go from there. Um, he's really big into probiotics, and I used to be pretty against probiotics for a long time, and in recent years I've kind of warmed up to the idea, and now I think I think it's a tool that we don't need forever, but I think it's a really helpful tool as we're recalibrating our systems. So I think probiotics are a wonderful way to sort of give the boost to that good side of the war. The people who we want to encourage to help digest the things that we're eating that are good for us. So some of my favorites are homemade nut yogurts. I've got some fermenting right now. Fermented cabbage juice, or chili juice, which you can see right here if you can see the camera. This was I'll have a sip right now. This was a recommendation from Lila way back, and she swears by it, and I think it's delicious, and seems to help with lots of things. Just help to calm digestive system down, and yeah. So that's great. And then water kefir. However you say that. I haven't made this yet, but I'm excited to try. I've just ordered some water kefir grains, they call them. They're not really grains, but they're just the little things that help ferment the sugars and things. And then you just add sugar and fruit, and it eats most of the sugar and ferments, and you get a nice little bubbly beverage that's, you know, potentially very good for you. So, you know, take it as you will if you do probiotics or not. But I do think they can be helpful, in my opinion. And then I wouldn't eat anything. I'm gonna take a sip. Delicious. I wouldn't eat anything super dense that day. So like cooked foods, processed foods for sure. I mean, if you can just swear out processed foods, that's a great thing to do. But cooked foods, I wouldn't do that. And especially don't eat super dense things close to bedtime, which is, you know, pretty good to practice all the time either. So juice if you need something closer to bedtime, or fruit, you know, light fruit. And then day 5 is a pretty good day to transition back into wherever you were before. So if you want to stay in the frugivore way, then stay there. You're already there. Congratulations. If you want to go move into denser or cooked foods, this would be a good day to experiment and try it, but just take it really slow, you know, like a few bites at a time, see how you feel, see how it digests, and then go from there, you know, because if too much too fast, it's really uncomfortable if your system is not ready. And it is nice to have soft leafy greens, like a nice simple salad to follow any cooked foods that you do, because that's going to help provide a broom to push things through, especially with things like potatoes. Yeah, potatoes, it's very ideal to have leafy greens after potatoes. And then I listed that ginger tea is great for digestion if you need a little boost there. And then he recommends this this juice or smoothie. I've never done it before, but I've got the fermented cabbage juice, and I know cabbage is really helpful for digestion. So he recommends, if your digestion is messed up, then to do a cabbage, green apple, ginger juice or smoothie. Smoothie, if you don't have a juicer is going to be, you know, a little bit easier to move through, but either one would be great to help smooth things out. So that's a tool to use. But anyway, sorry for the long-winded presentation there. That's the conclusion of the document that I wrote, and just wanted to, you know, thoroughly go through it all and share my experience and my knowledge, and again, give a huge thanks to Trevor and to Casey and to all the wonderful people who are embarking on this journey of rediscovering who we truly are and the miraculous capabilities that we have. And I mean, we have superpowers. Like to tell somebody that, anyway, it's miraculous what we can do, truly. So yeah, I guess I'll just conclude with maybe saying, maybe just touching on some spiritual aspects of this as well that I didn't hit on in the presentation. So it's something where the removal of things in the external, because intellectually we might be learning that everything is internal, right? Like we are internally projecting out our reality. So it all starts within. And intellectually we can get that idea. We can wrap around that with from a mental perspective. But there's not many things that I've experienced where you can integrate that on such a clear-cut way than to do a fast, because you are cutting off the external, essentially, you know, in so many ways. And so it just leads to a more refined perspective of where is this coming from, and how am I operating, and all of that. which, it can be a very challenging process to go through. As I mentioned, it's like um, taming the ego in an accelerated form, but it kind of kicks your ass too. You're getting your ass kicked physically and mentally and maybe emotionally, and things can come up. But it's through that intense training that we come out so much stronger and so much more prepared to face not only just the physical health space, but so much more in life, so much more that life has to give us. And I've felt, even in just these few days since coming out, and I know it's aligned with the seasonal shift and everything too, and that's why it's such a good time of year to do it. But I felt just such a surge of energy and motivation and enthusiasm. And I mean, even just going to the store the other day, uh, just like, I'm always very friendly with people. I always love to smile at people and chat with them, but it felt like there was an extra dose of that, where I was just like, I saw people a little bit deeper. I saw me a little bit deeper. I saw you a little bit deeper. And that's always very humbling and grounding, but also expanding and powerful, at the same time. It's both. So I love that I've done this, and I'm excited to, continue to integrate these lessons that I've learned over this period of time and to step into it further. And we'll see what happens next. So yeah, yeah, I'll just end there. But I did want to mention that we are going to have a follow-up conversation on this tomorrow with someone who you may have heard in the community. She's come on a few times, and we've done a couple shows in the past, but she's really excited to dive into the breath. And so I've kind of saved the conversation around the breath and what it meant during this dry fast for that. I haven't gone too deep into it. I've mentioned a few things, but I'm really excited to have this show with Robin Mason tomorrow, who's really just blossoming with her knowledge around breath and what it means, and how we can strengthen our relationship to the divine through this wonderful practice that we're doing all the time, whether we realize it or not. So if we step into a conscious role with that, it just becomes more magical and more fluid. And when you're in the middle of a dry fast and your mouth is closed and there's nothing else that's coming into you except for the breath, it's very important to be conscious of that, or at least it was for me. And as I mentioned, taking those steps outside, taking that breath of fresh air, and just feeling what the breath does. I talked about how the sensations of the water when it entered my body, but I did the same thing with the breath when I would, especially with the fresh air. There was like a noticeable difference in movement through my body and energetic shift within that. And I told Robin, I was like, I wish I had talked to her before doing this, because I mean, of course, there are lots of breathing practices out there, but I'm really curious to hear what she has to share. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern. So starting right at this time, right around this time. And that should be an exciting one too. So Robin, I don't know if you're available or you want to say anything real quickly. No pressure if you aren't. But yeah, just to talk about that.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you for all that, for all the sharing, and for the wonderful introduction that you just gave. I have a lot of questions that I really want to save for tomorrow's discussion. And just a lot of thoughts, and very excited to really hear, the depth that you went with your breath, or maybe that you didn't, and we'll find something in that path as well. But I'm excited for the conversation. I think it's going to flow beautifully. And yes, I love my breath, and I'm just very excited to share all of that. So thank you, Justin. And yeah, I would love to hear from everybody else. Of course, it'll be open discussion like Justin always has it. And we can just really come together on this because I've done a little research with the dry fasting and breath, and there's really not a lot out there. So yeah, so excited to dive into all that. Thanks, Justin.
Awesome. Thanks, Robin. And that's exciting that there's not much, because it means you can create some links and put some stuff out there. That's cool. So yeah, I'm excited about tomorrow too. But today I'm happy to go. At least, we can go a bit longer. If anyone, we didn't have a lot of time to go into discussion or questions today. I didn't realize that presentation was going to take me so long, but I'm glad it did, because it felt very thorough and complete. So I feel complete with that. But I would love to hear from anyone, if anyone has any questions or comments or things they want to share, or yeah, go ahead, Jill. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Justin. That was amazing. Thank you so much for that. My question actually, and maybe Robin can incorporate it tomorrow. I'm not sure if I'll be able to tune in, but Matthew has been obviously he's fasting with me intermittently and on a liquid fast for this month, but he's gotten into the mouth taping, which I don't have a problem with, but actually a lot of my boys do. They're, I can smell it when I walk in the room in the morning to wake them up, etc. It seems it would be helpful for especially a dry fast, because right now in Western New York, as you know, it's cold and the heat's on and it's just very drying. So would you recommend that during this, or maybe Robin will speak on it tomorrow? Thank you.
Yeah, just oh, go ahead, Robin. Did you have something you want to share?
Yeah, just I mean, I could speak on it real quick and we can go in more depth on it tomorrow, but just in case you can't be there. And you did say mouth taping. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what she said.
Okay.
Yes, yep.
Okay. Like just for just a quick general answer on that, I would definitely say the mouth taping would be, a beautiful thing, because breathing through the nose is going to increase the oxygen in your blood, and that's going to give you muscle energy. So I want to even go in deeper with that tomorrow and talk about preparing, not necessarily mouth, but certain breathing exercises so you can bring the oxygen more in before. And we can talk about, and I'd like to hear from Justin if he thinks that would be helpful or not. So great question.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that sounds phenomenal to go deeper into tomorrow. But just to briefly say, I have mouth taped before, and it was more of an experiment. I've never really found myself to be a mouth breather at night or anything like that. I don't usually wake up with like a dry mouth or dry throat or anything in that capacity. I've never been told that I snore or anything like that. So I just did it. I did it for about a month, and I just did it every night just for fun, just to see if I noticed anything different. And I didn't notice anything hugely different, but it wasn't an unpleasant process. It's kind of like, yeah, I mean, I think it's helpful to shift. So it's a great tool if somebody does find themselves mouth breathing, or hears that they snore or anything like that, because, and it might sound scary at first, like, oh, you're putting a piece of tape in your mouth, like, what are you, yeah, it can seem intense, but it's really not. Like, the tape is very gentle, it's very easy to take off, so it's just a gentle way to keep the mouth closed, so that so that you can sleep peacefully, and, as Robin mentioned, have that airway go as the breath is really intended, which is to oxygenate the blood, and it's warming the air as well when it goes through the nose. When it goes through the mouth, the air can be too cold for the body, and sometimes that can cause issues as well. So mouth breathing is very very harmful for us to do consistently. Now, if there are specific breathing practices where that happens, and that's a different story. But as far as a regular way of breathing through the nose is ideal all the time. So thanks, Jill, for the question.
Oh, thank you. And I look forward to hearing tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Anybody else got any questions? We don't have to keep going, but I'm happy to if anybody does. All right. Well, yeah, that was a pretty good conversation, pretty good little rundown. Like I said, I'm going to work on this document, make it just a little, I don't know. Now that I've done it, I want it to look good. So I'm going to fix up some things and then I'll get that on my website post. So that's an easy place to host it. So you'll be able to refer to this guide. Again, just want to say it's just for entertainment. Don't don't try this at home. But if you do, I didn't tell you to proceed at your own risk, because it is risky, but high risk, high reward, you know. So thank you all for being here today, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day wherever you are. As always, sending out lots of love, and we'll talk soon. Bye, everyone.